Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you're here live or watching this as a replay, you're likely facing one of the most significant decisions in your professional journey. Not just where to get your MBA, but where you'll spend 2 transformative years becoming the leader you are meant to be and envision for your future. So what we're going to do is go deep into what makes each school that we're discussing today, so that's Kellogg, Booth, and Ross, fundamentally different from one another. Not just in their marketing materials, but in their DNA, and what they value, in who thrives there, and most importantly, in how you need to think about presenting yourself to each school. So across Danaya Anderson, who is a coach at C Admissions, as well as myself, we worked with countless candidates who've been admitted to multiple M7 schools. And we've seen firsthand that the right fit can make all the difference, not just in admissions, but also in the experiences that you have when you're there. So today we're going to share some of those insights with you to help you navigate this really important journey in your career. So let's address the elephant in the room. Kellogg, Booth, and Ross are all top-tier programs. They're all in the Midwest. They all have strong alumni network and excellent career outcomes. On paper, they may look similar. When you talk to students, they may look similar. But the truth is, applying to these 3 schools with the same strategy is kind of like wearing the same outfit in 3 different events: a wedding, a job interview, and a hiking trip. Sure, you're going to be dressed, but you're probably not dressed right for either one of them. Each of these schools has a distinct personality, a distinct way of evaluating candidates, and a distinct type of person who flourishes there. When we work with clients at C Admissions, one of the first things we do is help applicants understand these differences, not at a surface level, but at a level that matters for the application and, more importantly, for your life. The candidates who get into multiple schools, they're not just qualified, they have done the deep work to understand what each program is really looking for, and also the deep work of what they actually want and care about. And that's exactly what we're going to be unpacking today. Let's start with Kellogg. If there is one word that defines Kellogg, it's collaborative. But I want you to forget everything you think about the word, because at Kellogg, collaboration isn't really a soft skill, it's a hard skill. Kellogg is looking for people who don't just work well with others, but who actually make everyone around them better. They want to see evidence that you build bridges, facilitate difficult conversations, brought despairing groups together. This isn't really about just being nice, although you will experience that if you've spoken to anyone at Kellogg. It's about being effective through people and working with people. And when we, as an example, when we worked with a consultant, I'm going to call him sort of this traditional background, could easily blend in the pile of many consultants who apply. What we did here is we didn't focus only on the individual achievements. We focused on a specific international project where he brought together stakeholders across 3 countries with competing interests. The way he navigated cultural differences, built trust, and ultimately delivered results. That is what Kellogg wanted to hear and wanted to see in his application. So here's what matters for your application to Kellogg, if that is one that you're choosing to apply to. Kellogg wants to see that you've chosen collaboration, not defaulted to it. Show them moments where you could have taken credit alone, but chose to share it. Show them times you've developed others, mentored teammates, or created systems that helped everyone succeed. And if you're someone who lights up talking about your team's success just as much as your own success, then Kellogg might be the exact place where you belong. Now let's talk about Booth. If Kellogg is about collaboration, Booth is about interrogation, but that in the best way possible. Booth has this reputation for being quantitative, and yes, they do love data, but it's deeper than just data. Booth is looking for people who think critically, who don't accept because that's how we've always done things as an answer. They want people who are comfortable sitting in the gray area, who can construct an argument and defend it. We had a client from cybersecurity with a low GPA, or at least lower than the average class, which could have definitely been a red flag in the admission process. But what made him compelling to Booth wasn't his technical skills, it was how he approached problems. He didn't just implement security protocols, he challenged the entire framework his company was using and built a new model for the group. He thought like a researcher and not just a practitioner. And something critical is that he also demonstrated something that could easily be missed about Booth. He was deeply committed to developing his team. Booth wants intellectual rigor, but they also value people who use that rigor to lift others up. He got into both Kellogg and Booth, but ultimately chose Booth because he felt the academic environment was more aligned with how his brain works. He connected with students who love to debate, to push back, to go 3 levels deeper into any question that they were debating. So for your application to Booth, show them that you're not just smart. Show them you are curious. Show them the problems you've dissected, frameworks you've questioned, analysis you run that others wouldn't have thought to do. And show them you can handle being wrong, because at Booth, being wrong is just the beginning of getting to being right. Now, let's look at Ross. Ross is looking for people who are action-oriented, not reckless, but decisive. People who see a problem and don't wait for permission to solve it. They value initiative, scrappiness, and most importantly, evidence that you're actually moved the needle somewhere in whatever area that you're coming from. So let me tell you about that same consultant I mentioned earlier who got a full ride at Ross, and ultimately we helped negotiate $70,000 from Kellogg. What made him compelling to Ross wasn't just that he worked on a high-profile project. It was that on the international project, when things started to go sideways, misaligned stakeholders, budget overruns, timeline pressure, he didn't escalate and wait for someone else to fix it. He created a new work stream, reallocated resources, and got everyone back on track. He took ownership, even though he wasn't technically the owner of the project. Ross wants to see that you're someone who makes things happen. They're looking for proof points. What have you built? What have you fixed? What would not have happened if it weren't for you and you being there? And the nuance that matters for your application is that Ross isn't looking for that lone wolf. Yes, you're going to take action, but not alone. They want collaborative action takers. Show them you can rally people around the vision and then execute on that vision. Show them you understand that leadership without results is just talking. And as the adage goes, talking is cheap. If you're someone who gets restless when there's too much planning and not enough doing, Ross might be the place for you. So let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention in the application process. You are not choosing just a program. You're choosing where you're going to live for the next 2 years. You are going to who you're going to be spending weekends with, who you're going to call when you get a job offer and need advice. Culture isn't something you can fake your way through, and it's not something you can fully appreciate until you're in it. But there are real tangible differences in the day-to-day experience at these schools, and it's really important that you understand them. At Kellogg, you're going to be in constant contact with your classmates. Study groups morph into friend groups. There's a strong emphasis on the social experience. Yes, Kellogg has wonderful parties. But more than that, there's a genuine warmth to the community that you will feel if you've had any conversations with any Kellogg students. So if you are an introvert who needs a lot of alone time, just know that Kellogg's culture might really stretch you. At Booth, intellectual sparring is the norm. Your classmates will push back on your ideas, not because they're being difficult, but because that's how everyone gets sharper. The flexible curriculum means that you see a wider variety of people in your classmates, which can be energizing if you like meeting new people constantly, or exhausting if you prefer tight-knit cohorts. And now at Ross, you're going to be doing the multidisciplinary action project, or MAP, aren't just a cool thing on the website. They're 7-week intensive projects where you're consulting for real companies, whether that's locally, nationally, internationally. If you thrive on tangible outcomes and get frustrated by too much theory, you're definitely going to love Ross. But if you want more time to explore and reflect, it may feel relentless in the context of your experience. And here's what we tell our clients here at C-Admission. Visit if you can, especially if you are in the United States. But everyone should, and I underline should, talk to students. Ask them what a random Tuesday looks like, because that's the life you're choosing, not the highlight reel that you see in marketing collateral. Now, I want to give you a framework to think about how these schools evaluate you and your application throughout the entire process. Every school asks some version of why an MBA, why now, why here. The phrasing of it is going to be slightly different, but all of them want to know that. But what they're really asking underneath those words may be different between schools. So when Kellogg asks about your goals, they want to understand how your goals involve bringing people along with you. They want to see leadership that's inclusive, that's multiplying impact through others. So when you talk about your past experience, emphasize the teams you've built, the people you developed, the collaborative wins, not just your own. When Booth asks similar questions, they're looking for intellectual depth. They want to see that you've thought through multiple scenarios, that you've considered different frameworks, that you can articulate why this path makes sense analytically. Show them your thinking process, not just your conclusions in your application. When Ross asks about your goals, they want evidence of execution. They want to see that you don't just have ideas, you have a track record of making ideas real. Talk about specific initiatives you've launched, metrics you've moved, problems you've solved. And here's something that we see all the time from applicants that come to us after being rejected. Candidates who will write one version of their story and submit it to all 3 schools with minor tweaks. That is one of the reasons why people get rejected, applicants get rejected, because that's a huge mistake. Your core story stays the same because you are who you are, but the emphasis needs to shift based on what each school values. that consultant who got into both Ross and Kellogg, with both actually significant scholarship, we didn't change his story. He was who he was. We changed where we put the spotlight. For Ross, we emphasized the execution and ownership of that international project. For Kellogg, we emphasized how he brought diverse stakeholders together and the team dynamics. Same project, but a different lens to that same story. Now, let's say that you're fortunate enough to be chosen between 2 or all 3 of these schools. How do you actually make that final decision? This is where it gets really personal, and this is where a lot of candidates second guess themselves. They start looking at rankings, asking friends, polling LinkedIn, but here's what we've learned working with people who've had the exact decision to make. The right answer is always the one that feels right in your gut. If you've done the work to understand what your gut is telling you, that is. So let me give you a framework we use at C Admission when we help clients think through the school choices. First, where do you do your best work or best thinking? Are you someone who needs quiet time to process, or do you think out loud? Do you get energized by intellectual debate, or does it really drain you? And be honest with yourself. This is where you are setting the stage for the rest of your professional life. At Booth, you're going to be debating constantly. At Kellogg, you're going to be processing in groups. And at Ross, you're going to be thinking while doing. Those are the realities that you have to think through in your decision-making process. And second, what genuinely energizes you, not what you think you should energize, what you think should energize you, but what actually does. Is it exploring ideas for their own sake? Is it connecting with people and building relationships? Is it seeing tangible results from your work? There's no wrong answer, but there is an answer that's true for you. And third, think about your future self. In 5 years, when someone asks what you're known for, what do you want that answer to be? If it's bringing people together and building consensus, that's the Kellogg DNA. If it's solving thorny, complex problems that others can't crack or struggle to crack, that's Booth. If it's driving results and making things happen, that's Ross. The cybersecurity professional I mentioned earlier, he chose Booth over Kellogg because he realized he comes alive in intellectual environments. He loves a good debate. He wanted classmates who would challenge his assumption. That's a specific choice based on his self-awareness. The consultant who chose Kellogg over Ross, he realized that relationships are what matters most to him personally and professionally. He wanted to build a network that felt like family. Different choices, but equally valid. I want to take a moment to talk about why this level of nuance matters, not just for your application, but for your life. We've seen candidates get into their dream school based on prestige alone, only to struggle because the culture wasn't right for them. We've also seen candidates choose the school that was the best fit, not necessarily the highest rank, and absolutely thrive there. At C Admissions, our job isn't only to get you into the best school. Of course, that's what we hope for you. But our job is to help you get into the right school for you, and then help you put together an application that makes that school see why you are the right fit for them. When we work with that consultant on his Ross application, we spent hours understanding what he wanted his MBA experience to feel like. What kind of learning environment brings out his best? What kind of peers he wanted around him? And then we helped him articulate that in a way that made Ross see him as an ideal fit. The full ride scholarship, that absolutely wasn't luck. That was the result of perfectly aligned application. When we work with the cybersecurity professional I also mentioned earlier, we helped him see that his low GPA wasn't a liability. It was an opportunity to tell a story about how he's grown, how he's learned to develop others, and how he thinks differently now than when he was in college. Both Kellogg and Booth saw that, and that's why they admitted him. And when it came time to choose between them, we helped him trust his instinct about where he'd thrive intellectually. And also by that point, we've spent about 8 months working together. We also recognized where he thrived in better. So this is the level of partnership we bring. We don't have templates. We have a process that's deeply individualized because every candidate is different and every school is looking for something specific. We've also noticed that the candidates who do this deep work of understanding fit don't just get better results in admission, they make better decisions for themselves. They start their MBA with a lot more clarity, even if they end up changing their goals down the line. They're not spending their first semester wondering if they made the right choice, what it is that they're doing. They have a lot of clarity. So at this point, if you are interested, if you're still applying in round 2, I encourage you to reach out for a consultation to talk about how our different approaches or our different service offerings can support you in that. But if not, that's totally okay. Hopefully this session was really helpful for you to get a little bit more clarity on how to put together strong applications. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like so it lets us know that we're doing the right things in terms of what you guys are looking for, and subscribe to be notified for our future events and engagements. So we're going to spend the next 7 minutes answering questions. Let's see if there's any here. So if you have questions from whichever platform you're joining us, please write it in the comment. We won't place it on the screen for your privacy, but we will read it out loud and answer it within the 7 minutes we have left. So let's go with questions that came through the registration form. How to connect different experiences across functions and industries to develop a strong narrative. Where we start at C Admissions is first and foremost understanding where it is that you're going, and then building a cohesive narrative that makes sense across your experiences. There is a reason if you have, different experiences across industries, that can be problematic in the application, given that the admission team may assume that you're not ready for this next step if you're hopping around different industries. So our job is to find patterns in the decision-making and help you see those in a way that makes sense. The functions that you've held also, if you have too many changes in your application, can be perceived problematic for business schools. Because again, they are really looking to know and understand how ready you are for this next chapter in your career. There's a reason why there is a number of years of experience before you can apply to business school, because you need to have experienced the real world before you're ready to make a commitment into this next journey. So we're going to start with the goals and then find an anchor point that helps the reader understand all the decisions that you made throughout your career, and then anchor again, coming to what do you want to do and how have your experiences influenced your future. I don't have here enough information to know exactly what that looks like. So if you're interested in discussing how we can support you, I invite you to request a consultation. All right, next question. If I'm targeting consulting post-MBA, how should my application differ across Kellogg, Booth, and Ross? Each one of those schools helps applicants go through or gain opportunities in consulting. I mean, we think about that's like a natural thing in business school. What I mentioned earlier through my presentation is how you showcase the kind of personality you are. So it's really not about your goals. I mean, yes, it is about your goals in the context of what you want to do and can the school help you, but the schools can help you get into consulting. Then the second layer is how do you match their values, who they look for. And I would encourage you to go back to this presentation and go through understanding what each of the school is looking for, the kind of candidate that you're looking for, and then be able to showcase that through your own experiences, through what you've done in your professional or extracurricular setting that embody the character that they are looking for. What is the smartest strategy for sequencing submissions if I apply to all three in the same round? I'm assuming this question is asking, like, how do I prioritize? I think that's what the question is. But if that's the question, we always approach like, what's the first school first, and then where are the overlapping narratives? So you can start writing one of each of those narratives, so that you can really make sure that you have the foundation first, and then you move from school to school to make the tweaks that you do afterwards. Obviously, I'm very much oversimplifying the process, but that is a way that, you know, given that we are technically 2 months away until application deadlines for round 2, you really want to make sure that you're maximizing your time in your application development to have really strong outcomes. And then last question. What metrics or signals shows I'm targeting the right school based on my profile and post-MBA goals? Well, you want to be close to the class profile. So meaning, you know, where do you stack up compared to the class that you're at the school that you are applying to? That is your GPA, that's your GMAT or GRE, years of work experience, background, those kinds of details. All of this information is available in each school's website, so there's no like trying to game the system or anything along those lines. And then I would say from there, you want to look at what is the school's strength in the area of your interest. So if you do consulting, you know, financial services, tech, that's where 80% of the class actually gets jobs there. But I would want you to think long-term, what do you want to do long-term? So for example, school applicants who are really Oh, I think my mic got muted. All right, sorry, I don't know how much of that you heard, but essentially you want to understand what the program is going to be offering beyond that short-term goal. So if you want to do consulting across all schools, but if you want to do healthcare, not every school has a strong network in healthcare. Okay, it seems like there is a question. Let's just really briefly answer this one. As an international applicant, how can I make up for a low GPA, 3.12 out of 4, to maximize my chance for a scholarship? I would say your GMAT or GRE has to be significantly above the class average in order to make up for that score. This obviously depends which school you're applying to, but if you're targeting M7 T20, the class averages are anywhere between 3.5 to 3.79, 8, something like that. So you want to be having a really competitive GMAT score or GRE score to showcase that you are no longer the version of you that was in college. But beyond the test score, you also want to obviously show a strong career trajectory of success that enables you to get in. I had a client once that I worked with who had a 2.8 out of 4 GPA, but had a classic edition GMAT 750, CFA, all 3 levels cleared, and private equity experience. So the only blemish in his application was just the GPA, and we were able to get him to really present a strong application. He not only got into Kellogg, but also got a $40,000 scholarship on top of that. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you found it helpful. And next week we will have 2 live events. The first is going to be with GMAT Club, and we're going to talk about what top 10 schools are looking for in essay writing. So if you're going through the writing process, I encourage you to register for that event. And then on Thursday, so next week, same time, we're going to compare Wharton and Booth. See you then. Have a wonderful remainder of the week and weekend.